Hello and welcome. In this video, we'll read the chapter The Snake and the Mirror. So let's begin. Has a snake ever coiled itself around any part of your body? A full blooded cobra? All of us fell silent. The question came from the homeopath. The topic came up when we were discussing snakes. We listened attentively as the doctor continued with his tale. It was a hot summer night, about 10 o'clock. I had my meal at the restaurant and returned to my room. I heard a noise from above as I opened the door. The sound was a familiar one. One could say that the rats and I shared the room. I took out my box of matches and lighted the kerosene lamp on the table. Difficult words. Coiled, wound or twisted around something. Full blooded, real, complete, strong type. Homeopath, a doctor who treats patients with natural remedies. Attentively, carefully, with full attention. Familiar, well known, easily recognized. Kerosene, oil used for lamps. The doctor asked if anyone had ever felt a cobra wrapping around them. This question shocked everyone, and they listened silently. The homeopath who practiced medicine started narrating his experience. It was a hot night at 10 o'clock when he returned from eating at a restaurant. As he opened his room, he heard a usual noise from above. He was used to such sounds because rats lived in his room along with him. He lit a kerosene lamp with matches to brighten the room. The house was not electrified. It was a small rented room. I had just set up medical practice and my earnings were meager. I had about 60 rupees in my suitcase. Along with some shirts and dhotis, I also possessed one solitary black coat which I was then wearing. Difficult words. Electrified, supplied with electricity. Rented, hired for money, not owned. Meager, very small, not enough. Solitary, single, only one. Possessed, owned, had. Explanation. The doctor lived in a small room without electricity. It was not his own home, he was only renting it. Since he had just started his medical career, his income was very low. Inside his suitcase, he had only 60 rupees and a few clothes. Among them, his only special item was one black coat which he was wearing at that time. I took off my black coat, white shirt, and not so white vest and hung them up. I opened the two windows in the room. It was an outer room with one wall facing the open yard. It had a tiled roof with long supporting gables that rested on the beam over the wall. There was no ceiling. There was a regular traffic of rats to and from the beam. I made my bed and pulled it close to the wall. I lay down, but I could not sleep. I got up and went out to the veranda for a little air, but the wind god seemed to have taken time off. Difficult words. Vest, inner clothing worn under shirt. Outer, external, outside. Yard, open space beside a house. Tiled, roof made with flat pieces of baked clay or stone. Gables, triangular parts of a roof. Beam, strong wooden support. Traffic, movement back and forth. Veranda, open porch attached to a house. Explanation: he removed his black coat, shirt, and vest and hung them. He then opened both windows of the room. The room was at the edge of the house, with one wall facing an open yard. Its roof was made of tiles and supported by wooden gables. There was no ceiling, so rats frequently ran across the beam above. He arranged his bed and tried to sleep near the wall but failed. Later, he stepped into the veranda for fresh air, but unfortunately, there was no wind blowing at all. I went back into the room and sat down on the chair. I opened the box beneath the table and took out a book, the Materia Medica. I opened it at the table on which stood the lamp and large mirror. A small comb lay beside the mirror. One feels tempted to look into a mirror when it is near one. I took a look. In those days, I was a great admirer of beauty and believed in making myself look handsome. I was unmarried and I was a doctor. I felt I had to make my presence felt. I picked up the comb and ran it through my hair and adjusted the parting so that it looked straight and neat. Again, I heard that sound from above. Difficult words. Beneath, under, below. Materia Medica, a medical book describing medicines. Tempted, attracted, wanting to do something. Admirer, someone who loves or respects something. Presence, way of being noticed by others. Parting, line made when hair is divided. Explanation: the doctor returned inside and sat on the chair. He opened the box under the table and took out a medical book, Materia Medica. On the table were a lamp, a large mirror, and a small comb. When people see a mirror nearby, they usually want to look at themselves, and so did he. At that time, he admired beauty and wanted to appear handsome. Since he was still unmarried and a doctor, he felt he should look impressive. He combed his hair neatly, arranging the parting straight. At that very moment, he again heard the same noise from the roof above. I took a close look at my face in the mirror. I made an important decision. I would shave daily and grow a thin mustache to look more handsome. I was, after all, a bachelor and a doctor. I looked into the mirror and smiled. It was an attractive smile. I made another earth shaking decision. I would always keep that attractive smile on my face to look more handsome. I was, after all, a bachelor and a doctor too on top of it. Again came that noise from above. Difficult words. Shave. Cut off hair from the face with a razor. Mustache. Hair grown on the upper lip. Bachelor. An unmarried man. Earth shaking. Very important or life changing. He looked at himself closely in the mirror and made a serious decision. He would shave daily and grow a slim mustache to improve his looks. He reminded himself proudly that he was a bachelor and also a doctor. Then he smiled at the mirror and thought his smile was very charming. Another great idea struck him. He would always keep that smile on his face to appear more handsome. Again, he repeated to himself that he was a bachelor and a doctor, which made him feel confident. At that moment, the sound from the roof returned once more. I got up, paced up and down the room. Then another lovely thought struck me. I would marry. I would get married to a woman doctor who had plenty of money and a good medical practice. She had to be fat for a valid reason. If I made some silly mistake and needed to run away, she should not be able to run after me and catch me. With such thoughts in my mind, I resumed my seat in the chair in front of the table. There were no more sounds from above. Suddenly, there came a dull thud as if a rubber tube had fallen to the ground. Surely nothing to worry about. Even so, I thought I would turn around and take a look. No sooner had I turned than a fat snake wriggled over the back of the chair and landed on my shoulder. The snake's landing on me and my turning were simultaneous. Difficult words, paced, walked back and forth, struck, came suddenly to the mind. Valid, reasonable, logical. Dull thud, heavy muffled sound. Wriggled, twisted and moved like a worm. Simultaneous, happening at the same time. Explanation. The doctor walked around the room thinking. Then another idea came to him. He should marry a rich woman doctor with a successful practice. He even decided she must be fat, so if he even needed to escape after mistake, she could not run fast to catch him. Thinking about this, he sat down at the table again. Suddenly, there was a heavy sound as if a rubber tube had dropped. He tried to ignore it but decided to look back. At the very same moment, a big snake slid over the chair and landed on his shoulder. Both actions, his turning and the snake falling, happened together. I didn't jump, I didn't tremble, I didn't cry out. There was no time to do any such thing. The snake slithered along my shoulder and coiled around my left arm above the elbow. The hood was spread out and its head was hardly 3 or 4 inches from my face. It would not be correct to say merely that I sat there holding my breath. I was turned to stone, but my mind was very active. The door opened into darkness. The room was surrounded by darkness. In the light of the lamp, I sat there like a stone image in the flesh. Difficult words tremble, shake with fear, slithered, moved smoothly like a snake. Hood, expanded skin behind a cobra's head. Merely, only just, stone image, statue, unmoving figure, flesh, living human body. Explanation. The doctor did not jump, shake, or scream because he had no time. The snake crawled over his shoulder and wrapped itself around his left arm above the elbow. Its hood was open and its head was only a few inches from his face. He was not simply holding his breath, he felt like he had become a stone statue. Still, his mind kept working quickly. The room was surrounded by darkness outside, and the only light came from the lamp. In that light, he sat completely still, like a lifeless stone figure. I felt then the great presence of the creator of this world and this universe. God was there. Suppose I said something and he did not like it. I tried in my imagination to write in bright letters outside my little heart the words, "Oh God." There was some pain in my left arm. It was as if a thick leaden rod, no, a rod made of molten fire, was slowly but powerfully crushing my arm. The arm was beginning to be drained of all its strength. What could I do? Difficult words, presence, feeling that someone is there, creator, God, maker of the world, imagination, power of the mind to form ideas. Leaden, very heavy like lead, molten, melted due to heat, crushing, pressing very hard. Explanation. At that moment, he strongly felt the presence of God, the creator of everything. He thought carefully, worried that if he said anything wrong, God might dislike it. In his mind, he imagined writing the words, "O God," in bright letters over his heart. He then felt pain in his left arm where the snake was coiled. It was as if a heavy rod, or rather a rod of burning fire, was pressing down with great force. Slowly, his arm began losing all its strength, and he wondered helplessly what he could possibly do. At my slightest movement, the snake would strike me. Death lurked 4 inches away. Suppose it struck, what was the medicine I had to take? There were no medicines in the room. I was but a poor, foolish, and stupid doctor. I forgot my danger and smiled feebly at myself. It seemed as if God appreciated that. The snake turned its head. It looked into the mirror and saw its reflection. I do not claim that it was the first snake that had ever looked into a mirror, but it was certain that the snake was looking into the mirror. Was it admiring its own beauty? Was it trying to make an important decision about growing a mustache or using eyeshadow and mascara or wearing a vermilion spot on its forehead? Difficult words, slightest, even the smallest. Strike, attack suddenly, lurked, hid waiting in danger, feebly, weakly without strength. Reflection, image seen in a mirror, vermilion, bright red color often used as a mark on the forehead. Explanation. He realized that if he moved even a little, the snake might attack, and the death was only inches from his face. He thought about what medicine to take if bitten, but there were no medicines in the room. He felt foolish and helpless, calling himself a poor and stupid doctor. For a moment, he forgot his danger and gave a weak smile at his own situation. Strangely, it felt like God approved of that smile. Just then, the snake turned its head and looked into the mirror. It was clear that the snake was observing its own reflection. Perhaps it was admiring its beauty or wondering about decorating itself with a mustache, makeup, or a vermilion spot. I do not know anything for certain. What sex was this snake? Was it male or female? I will never know, for the snake unwound itself from my arm and slowly slithered into my lap. From there, it crept onto the table and moved towards the mirror. Perhaps it wanted to enjoy its reflection at close quarters. I was no mere image cut in granite. I was suddenly a man of flesh and blood. Still holding my breath, I got up from the chair. I quietly went out through the door into the veranda. From there, I leapt into the yard and ran for all I was worth. Phew! Each of us heaved a sigh of relief. Somebody asked, "Doctor, is your wife very fat?" Difficult words. Unwound, uncoiled, loosened, crept, moved slowly and quietly. Quarters, closeness, nearby area. Granite, very hard stone. Flesh and blood, living human being. Heaved, breathed deeply. Explanation: the doctor could not tell whether the snake was male or female. It slowly uncoiled from his arm, slid onto his lap, and then moved onto the table near the mirror as if it wanted a closer look at itself. This gave the doctor his chance. No longer a frozen statue, he felt alive again. Holding his breath, he quietly rose from the chair and walked out to the veranda. Then he jumped into the yard and ran as fast as he could. When he finished the story, everyone listening sighed in relief. One person asked him humorously whether his wife was fat. "No," the doctor said, "God willed otherwise. My life companion is a thin, reedy person with the gift of a sprinter." Someone else asked, "Doctor, when you ran, did the snake follow you?" The doctor replied, "I ran and ran till I reached a friend's house. Immediately I smeared oil all over myself and took a bath. I changed into fresh clothes. The next morning at about 8:30, I took my friend and one or two others to my room to move my things from there. But we found we had little to carry. Some thief had removed most of my things. The room had been cleaned out, but not really. The thief had left behind one thing as a final insult." Difficult words. Reedy, thin, slender. Sprinter, person who runs very fast. Smeared, spread a substance over the body. Cleaned out, emptied, robbed completely. Insult, something done to offend or hurt. Explanation: the doctor laughed and said that God had chosen differently. His wife was not fat at all, but very thin, like a reed, and she could run fast like a sprinter. Another person asked whether the snake had chased him. The doctor explained that he kept running until he reached his friend's house. There, he quickly put oil on his body, took a bath, and changed into fresh clothes. The next morning, around 8:30, he returned with his friend and others to shift his belongings. But they found almost nothing because a thief had stolen most items. The thief had completely emptied the room except for one thing left behind as an insult. "What was that?" I asked. The doctor said, "My vest, the dirty one." The fellow had such a sense of cleanliness. The rascal could have taken it and used it after washing it with soap and water. "Did you see the snake the next day, doctor?" The doctor laughed. "I've never seen it since. It was a snake which was taken with its own beauty." Difficult words. Vest, inner shirt. Rascal, a naughty or bad person, used humorously. Sense of cleanliness, awareness about keeping things clean. Explanation: someone asked what the thief had left behind. The doctor replied it was only his dirty vest. The thief must have had a strong sense of cleanliness, he joked, because the man could have washed the vest with soap and used it. Then someone else asked whether he ever saw the snake again. The doctor laughed and said he never did. According to him, it was a snake that was too busy admiring its own beauty.